And we'll have roll call. Julie here.
Mayor Mahler. Here. Councilor Coleman. Councilor Gerson.
Here.
Councilor Corley.
Maybe.
Councilor Richards. Councilor Sanchez.
Here.
Councilor Trask.
Here.
Bob Brianna.
Here.
Derek Dix. Kenneth Hamlin.
Here.
David Loman.
Here.
Josh Thorstad.
No batteries?
Oh, good. I like that plan. Set me up, didn't he? Dave, we're all out. There's no more.
Did Greg put you up to this?
I can confirm.
You see all those little tags right there?
I would not do that.
Oh,
Look at that, amazing little package.
Okay, let's get started.
Mr. Chairman, committee member, whatever, could you do the flag?
Yes.
salute, please?
Yeah.
Yeah. We can do it. Six.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here he is. We did it tonight, so just like.
Here's the man.
Apologies, everybody.
Yes.
Yeah, I was crazy. Forgot to pledge last night. Bothered me all night, so.
We got everything started. We're down to the review and discussion of the rest.
And we're gonna let the record reflect that Chair Thorstad arrived at 6:02 for the record.
Discussion of the proposed budget. Right? Did roll call?
Yeah, we did.
Okay, cool.
So, hello again. We're gonna start off with the community center fund. You'll find that on page 134 of your packet, or your budget book, sorry. And that goes through page 138. We don't have a lot to talk about in the community center fund, as it's a very small fund. The community center, the Jim Riggs Community Center, houses the Sweet Home Senior Center and the Boys and Girls Club. They each split the building. The city of Sweet Home acts as kind of just an intermediary as far as we pay the bills and we collect what is listed in here as, I think it's lease revenue, yes. But basically it's their reimbursements for the expenses that they incur when operating that building. So they split those expenses 50-50. The city of Sweet Home bills them. A question was brought up earlier today by Councilor Gerson, related to the natural gas number in that fund. I did do some digging, and the reason we budgeted so low this year is there just haven't used much of the natural gas. The forecast this year actually shows about $1,100 in expenses for natural gas. So we budgeted the 1,300 as a result. If we do need to make some adjustments, we have some flexibility down the road to do so. But we budgeted based on where expenses were at. So
Question.
we do feel average, right?
Be curious, why was it so high in the previous years?
That's a good question, and to be honest, I don't know that answer. I will have to do some digging into that. I don't know right off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'm glad Councilor Gerson asked that question because I flagged out.
Some of it may be related to the senior center not operating at its full capacity for a period of time during COVID, and so we'll have to, that's where I say we may need to adjust that next year as they have reopened their doors, gone back to semi-normal functions, so that may need to come up.
Well, except that if that's the actuals,
It's on.
thank you. If that's the actuals for 2020 was 7,000, and for 2021 it's 8,200, then it doesn't look like it changed much. I don't know what it was prior to COVID.
Right.
But I think they probably heat the building with gas.
I imagine they do. So through the end of February, the year-to-date billing for natural gas was $784 for the building. I'm not sure.
Maybe there's not a lot of people going to the center.
It could be
Given
that.
the
I don't know if
COVID.
they're using, if the kitchen was a driver for that, if, you know, if they were using gas appliances that they're using less of right now.
I'd be curious to know what that entails past years, out of curiosity.
Okay.
I know.
Sure, I can dig into past billings and find out maybe if we're just behind for some reason, but all of our bills, at least at this point, have been paid, so.
Mr. Chairman, I got a question. So why did the lease go down so far?
We do the lease billing based on the prior year's actuals and making sure that there's enough fund balance to cover. So the lease revenue is just based on what actual expenses came in. It's a one-for-one trade, so as they expend, we bill based on those expenditures.
And I agree with the mayor.
There it is.
I think we should go back on that natural gas thing for a couple of years or something, and figure that out, because that's a big stop.
I'll dig into that prior to the council's adoption of the budget, so that we can give you some more information
No,
on
no,
that.
I want to know tonight.
Well, I could also do that, but I would need a recess to, so that I'm not
No,
talking while I'm doing that.
somebody should read that.
And we're gonna, let the record show Councilor Coleman, right at 6:06. She did inform us she was going to be late. Yes.
You were all over me when I was.
Any other questions about the community center fund that I can answer for you? Okay. Next up, the building reserve fund, beginning on page 139, and this one goes through page 142 in your budget book. And again, not much to talk about here. The building reserve fund in the past was used as a holding spot for the city hall for purchasing this building and doing the construction for it. You will see that that fund actually begins with a negative fund balance. And that is because it currently holds the loan, the interfund loan that we took out to pay for the construction on this building. So over time, that fund will return to zero. It was a 10-year loan from the water depreciation fund, payable at, I think it was 2.5% interest rate possibly, at that time, or 2.8, I can't remember. But anyways, basically what happens in this fund is we make a debt payment to the water funds. And over time, this will return to zero. At which point we'll plan for our next project, whatever that be.
When's over time?
What is over time?
No, is that over time return?
Oh,
How long is over time?
so we took the loan out in in fiscal year 2019, so the last payment will be made in 2029. If you'll remember from our conversation in the general fund, we transfer out enough cash from the general fund, about just under $100,000 a year. We transfer that to the building reserve fund, and then the building reserve fund makes the associated debt payment.
So 10 years.
Yes. We were glad we could do it in half. Any other questions on the building reserve fund? Moving right along, special assessments, beginning on page 143. This one goes through page 146. This is a small fund. We have assessments outstanding related to the Foster Midway Sewer Project. Any revenue we collect in that as people make payments is collected in this fund, and then we transfer that out and it goes back to the general fund. Parks and Recreation. This is Fund 457, beginning on page 147. And goes through page 150. This fund it serves two purposes now. One, it is the fund that we collect parks donations in. So folks make donations from on their utility bills. The money goes into here to be used for parks projects or functions. Recently, the city also added a parks system development charge. And so that revenue goes in here as well to be used for future park projects or expansion of parks.
I'm sorry, what was that? For you?
A parks system development charge, SDC. So whenever there's new construction, then they're assessed specific SDC fees for water, sewer, transportation, parks, and storm. The budgeted number, the budgeted expenses in here, we have parks or projects and improvements budgeted at 31,500. It is a small amount that is meant to be kind of a buffer should something come up or should an opportunity arise for a grant match of some kind. Budget a little bit in here just as a precaution. Any questions on those?
So we're not necessarily. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
So we're not necessarily anticipating spending that money.
No, not necessarily. All right, now we move into the harder stuff. The water funds, beginning on page 151. This one goes through page 176 in your book. No. Why would you? Sorry, 161. 151 to 161. There are 4 different funds within the water division. They include a water treatment and operations fund, a water system development fund, a water capital fund, which covers our distribution system, and a water depreciation fund, which covers capital projects that are treatment plant. You will notice in these funds that there are some significantly high fund balances, higher than maybe what we've seen in the past. A lot of that is due to revenue proceeds from the American Rescue Plan Act or ARPA funds. We received half in this current fiscal year, and the other half is slated to be received in July of 2023. We're not proposing any rate increases for the water system for the coming fiscal year. I should note that in the future, we will need to consider either expenditure reductions or rate increases in order to balance the fund. The 5-year forecast says that by 2027, we would need additional revenues of 8%. So that's going to be something that we'll have to combat as we go forward. But at least for this fiscal year, staff thought that the proposal should not contain any increases, given that ratepayers are already dealing with so many cost increases across the board in their normal daily lives.
Brandon, on the miscellaneous revenues, why is such a big drop?
Which page is that on?
On page 154. You budgeted in 22, 595,000. 23, it's only 11,000.
Where is that?
It's on page 154 at the top,
Is
the
it
second paragraph. Or kind of-
595, 175?
Yeah.
And then down to 11,000. Oh, in the 2022 fiscal year, we had budgeted for revenue to offset a new project that we were working on for water meters. So we're replacing all of our water meters with ultrasonic smart meters. Are they smart meters? Yeah, smart meters. And so we had anticipated that we would need to bring in some sort of revenue, either in the form of a loan or an outside entity providing us with a loan, whatever the idea may be. We're not anticipating that for the next fiscal year.
Chairperson, for me. Brendan, back to the water rate increase. How many years has it been since we raised the rates?
With this proposal, we won't have changed the water rates this will be the 3rd year. The only other major change in the water funds for this proposal is a debt payment increase. So when we did a debt refunding in 2020, we put off, that's what I'm looking for. Deferred, thank you. We deferred principal payments on those loans for 2 years. in an effort to reduce what we were doing, paying in loan payments and provide us with some extra capital money. It still saved us money in the long run compared to what our previous debt payments were. And staff thought that that was the best idea and council approved, as far as deferring those payments to provide us with some extra capital. So what you are seeing in 2023 is the end of that deferment. We will finally start paying principal payments again along with our interest payments. So there is an increase there.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'm going to ask this one time. For water and wastewater, I ask every year, do you have enough training money? And why did you raise the one on page 158 by $75?
We have been slow, I have been slowly raising training over the last 3-4 years because of the requests. And so as we take on more certifications and we get more people certified, there's going to be need to spend a little bit more money. I think we're hitting the spot. I think down the road, we'll have to track what our CEUs are, our continued education for people to keep those certs. So
Okay, I just want to make sure that you,
absolutely.
because you have a good success with what you've done in the last couple of years, for how long it's been with those high school kids that are getting their certifications, and that's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Really pretty cool.
Yep.
Yeah, so I won't ask that again, and you told me that it's good?
Yep.
Okay,
I believe so.
all right, thank you.
Capital projects for the water fund. There are many. So I'll start at the top and work my way down. The water master plan, we had hoped to finish that in this current fiscal year, 2022. We will be unable to complete that before June is out. So we budgeted a small amount that is essentially going to roll over so that we can finish that water master plan in the beginning of next year. Easy valves, so that is the city going around and installing valves around town that would allow us easier access to shut off sections of the distribution system. That's budgeted at $35,000, and that will be an ongoing annual expense as we work to install those valves across the city. Plant security upgrades, this is something that came out of our AWIA assessment. That's a security.
America Water Infrastructure Act. It's a federal act that we had to comply with as a water provider.
So as a result, that study, that report told us that we needed to upgrade some of our security at our water treatment plant, maybe the waste, no, just the water plant. This is the water plant. So we've budgeted $50,000 to make those security upgrades. At the water treatment plant, a turbidimeter. Greg's definitely gonna have to talk a little bit more about that one if you have questions, but we budgeted that at $75,000, and I think that's a rollover project.
That's actually a new one.
Okay.
The sludge, the vacuum and the backwash finish water and BFDs is a carryover.
Okay, what's the? Fluoride system, 91,000, that was budgeted in this current fiscal year. We're not going to be able to accomplish that in the current fiscal year, so we've rolled that to the new year. Due to price increases, it is a little bit more. Vacuum sludge recirculation, budgeted at 100,000. We budgeted the first 100,000 in this current fiscal year. Those go into our water trains. There are 3 of them, so we will have one next year and one the following year as well. The last 3 projects in the water funds, the backwash and the variable flow device. That Greg mentioned a minute ago, budgeted at $348,000, again, a rollover project, unable to complete before June. Small diameter water mains, the city council has preliminarily approved using ARPA funds to complete upgrades with many of our small diameter water lines. Many of those around town exist in the form of 2-inch water mains. That's not very much for a main that feeds a community. So, and they're also very old, some of them in excess of 80 years, well past the useful life. So we're going to continue with those projects as we receive the ARPA dollars. The last one on the list is a generator at the water treatment plant that is currently budgeted at $1 million for the next fiscal year. The city is trying to do everything it can to obtain grants to accomplish that. But we still need to budget the expenditure, not knowing if we're gonna get the grant, but either way, it still needs to be, we still need to have the expenditure authority to spend. That's all I have for the water funds. We will entertain your questions if you have them.
Me. Brenda, do you have an update on the grant process? If you've gotten any information, or are we still
Which grant?
for the generator? I'm sorry.
I don't have any specific information. Public Works is still working on, I think they're waiting right now to hear back from Pac Power and their related organizations. So we don't have any answers yet. Hopefully soon.
Soon as in.
I don't have a,
So we just talked about this week. So we are speccing that and we'll bring the information. So what it's looking like, just for a quick, for us to do the whole package to get the grant, there was 3 options and they were expensive. Like the full package was to be up to a $4 million package. With a FEMA project, you have to then reimburse, be able to pay 25% of that. That's $1 million. Option 1 is just put a generator in. So I can do a generator for about $1 million, $1.2 million. I don't have to upkeep solar panels. I don't have to upkeep battery packs. All the stuff that goes along with that, we just go right down the road. So we're kind of wrapping that up and we're going to bring that back to you guys for discussion. You tell us to go for the whole package and we buy all this infrastructure, we're going to have to maintain it down. We got a bucket of so much to do that generator. So we'll come back and we can talk about those options, let you guys make a decision.
So regardless, that 1 million is set aside no matter what.
We're working towards that right now. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I have a question real quick. Chair, I have a question. On page 158, there was no 2020, 2021, there was no natural gas for electricity. All of a sudden, we just budgeted 8,000, 58,000.
so in the past, those expenditures were covered by a third party because we had an operating contract with a company to maintain our plants. In the current year, the first year that we're taking it over, that we took it over, we budgeted those dollars essentially in the utilities line, not knowing exactly what that was going to cost us. So now we've seen the first year's worth of expenditures and could start to make some assumptions on costs.
Okay, that was how, I was wondering how you came about that. Sure, I'll say questions. Okay, thanks.
Other questions for the water funds? Wastewater, you'll find this beginning on page 162 of your budget book. And this one goes to page 170. Same as the water funds, you'll find 4 different funds within the wastewater division. The names are virtually the same, just throw wastewater in place of water, so I don't need to go through the list again for you, but they are there under screen in case you're interested. Similar to water, we are not proposing any rate increases. These funds have not seen a utility fee increase since November 2017. So we are able to hold that where it's at for now. We'll see how long that lasts. Debt payment increases again for 2023, similar to water. We deferred some of the principal payments when we did our debt refunding. The major conversation for the wastewater side next year is the wastewater treatment plant. Really isn't much else that's happening on the wastewater side. That's the focus. That said, we do have a couple of general items as far as capital is concerned. We proposed purchasing a forklift for the wastewater treatment plant at 50,000. General system rehab, so that is us going around and fixing manhole covers, entry points, that kind of stuff.
Sewer
General
repairs, we may have to replace a line or put a section in, repair some of these lateral connection. So those, that provides some funds for us to go and buy piping and other things to do the work improvement.
The last line of that, you'll notice, is highlighted in yellow because I'm going to ask you for a minor adjustment. Not really that minor. We've budgeted $8.5 million for construction on the wastewater treatment plant, hopefully beginning next year. We're all crossing our fingers. But based on the timeline that we have received from our engineers, We are asking for you as the budget committee to, there are two lines there. One says unappropriated ending fund balance. The other says reserved for future expenditures on page 170. I'm asking you to take those dollars and instead put them down in construction to give us a total budget on the construction line of $11.7 million. The project is going to begin in a hurry next year. We've got a lot of money to spend. The schedule is ambitious and we are hopeful that we will get through as much as we can. But I need some flexibility in our expenditure authorization to ensure that we can cover all of the necessary expenditures next year. I'm asking for that adjustment from this body.
So you're asking for the 11.7?
Yeah, I'm asking you to move the 1.5 million and the $1,702,633 down to join the 8.5 million already budgeted.
What construction?
Yep.
How does that affect it?
It doesn't, the money's already there, so it's in the
In
fund.
other words, we're just moving money.
You're moving it between line items.
Sorry.
You're fine with our reserve requirements.
We don't have any. And yes, the other funds.
Want a thumbs up on that one?
Consensus probably, but also you may go in a little bit depth real quick, let the committee know why we're doing that too.
We currently have a $7 million grant on the table from the state of Oregon. That grant, we received that grant during the state's 2019, 2021 biennium, aka their last budget cycle. The city was unable to spend it at that time due to engineering concerns and some extra work that needed to be done as far as engineering was concerned. And so we did ask the state and they graciously approved extending those funds into their current budget cycle. That budget cycle for them, they operate on a 2-year budget. Some days I wish we did too, but they operate on a 2-year budget that ends June 30, 2023. So we have given the engineers a very tight task of getting us to a point where we have spent that 7 million. What they've come back with, and council, I think, will receive some additional information in the coming week. But what they've come back with is a project that is split kind of into 2 phases, with us spending 24, almost 24 million, I think, as part of the phase 1 construction. 11.7 million drains that fund. Anything above that for construction, we will have to rely on the loans that we have secured through the EPA.
So, Mr. Chairman, so the 30 million you're talking about,
Yes,
and that's gonna be a loan, it's not gonna be a grant.
and all the information that we have today says that that's a loan.
Okay.
It's related to a loan request or an application that we put in with the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality's Clean Water State Revolving Fund. And we don't have any other information that says it's not a loan.
But with this amount of money and the 30 million, if that's what it's gonna be, that's a pretty big chunk of the 47 that they asked or say that.
It's now up to 52.
This,
It's up to
this,
52 now?
this will
We better
get,
hurry up.
52 million.
this will get us started.
Wastewater.
The city staff is working diligently on securing the remaining amount that is necessary to complete this plant. Without getting too far ahead of what the council's going to see on Tuesday, we have some ground to make up as far as what we have in available funding. But I'm sure that we will find a way to make that happen. Because we don't really have a whole lot of other options.
So you guys all go to the same store, you go to the same Home Depots. Prices are going up faster than we can get it right. Stainless steel, and if you ever built a wastewater plant, has a ton of stainless steel in it. We've tried to cut out steel piping. We're using plastic piping where we can. We've gone from nice structures to metal buildings. We have cut this project without hurting functionality. So I'm hearing out there from other cities as well that are in the middle of projects. I heard a $60 million project is now 120. And we are working feverishly to get our arms around the budget, but know that phase one is nearly completed. We've got about 2-3 months and it'll be done. We hope to break ground by September, and it's going to happen phase one. And I know Brandon and Christy is working to work out the details with the state and other agencies. So
We're working on, certainly the federal government's infrastructure bill might be able to help in some cases. We're reviewing all of the funding options that we can find, and we will figure out a way to fund this.
Are we able to buy some of, like, you're not gonna start it till September, are you able to buy some of this stuff like now and store it, so it saves cost for today instead of months down the road? And because you can't anticipate, if it's going up in September?
Part of the concern with us starting to buy stuff right now is they're still working on finishing some of the design elements. And so we don't want to get too far ahead of the engineers. I believe that once, and it has to go through a bid process. So once we have our design in place, then yes, then that is something that can be achieved. And I believe something that the engineers are working on, that public works staff is working on, but we're not ready to do that right this second.
we are working on material lists. We've also discussed this week, we have 2 generator projects. We have the wastewater plants getting a new generator, and we've got a project going at the water treatment plant. Procuring those generators, I'm hearing they're a year out. So those are discussions that we're having internally.
Mr. Chairman, do you, Greg, you foresee any of these prices coming down? I mean, is this supply and demand, or is that just, and Greg speaks to this also because of.
Crystal ball or Brandon?
I'm gonna steal that question from her. The short answer is no, not in the time that we have to complete this project. And a lot of the reason for that is there is a ton of ARPA, CARES, infrastructure money out there right now. And governments of all sizes, all over the country, are doing the very same thing. Demand is extremely high. Supply has not kept up with that demand. As long as those dollars are out there, I don't anticipate any of these costs coming down. So we're looking at most of these dollars expire. You've got to have them essentially spent, so to speak, or at least encumbered by the end of December 2024, with spending completed by December by 2026. So we're probably looking at 2026 before we see any kind of reprieve in any of this pricing. But at that point, then all of the funding is gone. So for lack of better words, every government in the United States of America is stuck with this.
A rock and a hard job.
Pretty much.
Right now, our proposed finish date for the plant is May 25.
Chair, Brendan, Greg, do you guys know how much money we're gonna spend out of pocket versus how much money we're gonna get in grants and repayable loans?
I don't know that answer yet. We have engineer estimates. The city has stated that it's gonna spend the 7 million that we believe we'll have on hand. We're well on the way to do that. We've secured 9 million in grant funding from the state of Oregon. And we are hopeful, like we said, that we'll spend that 7 million. How the rest of the funding comes down is still up in the air. The 30 million is a loan. Beyond that, I'm not sure.
So 16 million you just said was basically gifted to us?
9 million.
7?
9 million was
The
gifted to
7
us.
is in-
7 is in-house. This 11.7 million gets us started. We will have to fill in the puzzle pieces as we move forward and as council makes decisions on how the rest of this goes.
One thing is going for us is we're not in this rat hole alone.
That's very
All
true.
those municipalities who have wastewater treatment plants to upgrade are sitting there with us.
And there are many municipalities that unfortunately are choosing to bail out of their projects after they've already spent countless time and dollars on getting to a point where they could move forward. But it comes down to need.
We
Why
can't
do
really
they
bail
allow?
out.
We don't have a lot of flexibility.
There's a lot of voices out there. You're gonna ask for reprieve on this thing.
Sure.
I think.
Can we steal those grants?
I'm sorry.
Can we steal those grants?
We're hoping that as cities give that up, then we can say, well, how about this? But I don't have definitive answers for you. I wish I did. I do, but I don't unfortunately have definitive answers for you until we can. We're still getting, our new cost estimates are recent. I learned them last week. So we are pedaling as fast as possible to keep up.
Mr. Chairman, so Brandon, do you need a consensus about this or do we need to vote?
We're gonna ask at the end of this process for the council, not the council, the budget committee to approve the change in a formal process. We're gonna add that with the HVAC request that we made yesterday.
So we're moving to 171.
I'm sorry?
We're now moving to 171.
Yes, stormwater.
I have one question before we're gonna call this to Greg. I noticed in the hiring, it says here, you had a mechanic and a plant manager, a number 3 and a number 2 plant manager last year. You got rid of them and now you're making all plant manager operators 1.
I'll answer that. So we made some assumptions. So that being that this is the first fiscal year that we have had control of these plants, we made some assumptions on the positions. What we ended up hiring was plant operator 1s, all of them across the board. And so, yes, we made the changes in the budget to reflect what we actually have on staff today.
But I only saw an increase in staff pay by $33,000. So if you make them all plant 1, how do you get away with $27,000?
Project manager?
Where did you see the 33?
Well, I'm only looking at wastewater treatment pay.
So on page 166.
Right, staff pay.
So we had 184,000 budgeted this year with those higher level positions. We're budgeting 171,000 next year in the treatment plants. Based on those lower positions.
So how did it go down?
The lower positions are the lower classifications have lower pay scales.
Oh, plant 1 is.
Plant 1 is a lower pay scale than than an operator 3.
Thank
1, 2, 3.
you. I thought it went.
Yeah.
1, yeah.
All right, page 171, stormwater. This goes through page 176 in your book. Similar to water and wastewater, stormwater only has 3 funds for your review. They are the Stormwater Operations Fund, 560, Stormwater System Development, 561. Yeah. Excuse me. And Stormwater Capital, 562. Again, no rate increases are proposed. I say this, and we have mentioned this every year. The city of Sweet Home is currently below the 10,000 population mark. When we get to 10,000, our stormwater requirements change significantly. An assessment that was done in 2008 or 2006 in place of putting a stormwater fee in place recommended a $4 stormwater fee. We're currently at $3. And when that 10,000 mark comes, probably with the next census in 2020 or 2030, the city's going to have to consider how are we going to have, Blair's shaking his head.
It's the Portland State University numbers they're gonna worry about those kind of.
Are they going to use Portland State numbers?
They always do, yeah.
Oh.
Well, every other.
So each year, we're at the risk of crossing that 10,000 population threshold. And when we do, DEQ is going to come knocking. So know that as we go forward in the future, the budget committees of the future might have to consider rate increases in order for us to get new requirements into the ground that are necessary.
The water is becoming the next gold.
Yes. Rainwater specifically. Questions on the stormwater section?
I have one question. Seems like every fund, the group insurance has dropped. Each time, are we not having to use it as much or not claiming? Is that why it's dropping?
We've had some reductions in some of our insurance rates. So our primary insurance, medical, dental, and vision is not changing. Our long-term disability insurance rates dropped. And in the last fiscal year, we made the change from using one company for our long-term disability and basic life insurance and accidental death. No, just those two, long-term disability and basic life. And we moved to our current medical insurance provider with CIS, and we actually cut the rates in half. So we've done work to try to keep those as low as possible. And we actually get to offer better coverage as well. Streets. Everybody loves driving on those streets. 3 different funds within the streets division: the street maintenance improvement fund, 570, the gas tax fund, 575, and the FAT program, 585. Major changes in the street subdivision for this year is we have added an FTE for 2023. By added an FTE, I mean brought it back to where it was 2 years ago. In the current budget for 2022, we had cut a position based on dollars available. Gas taxes, if you're not aware, when COVID hit and the shutdowns occurred, tanked. We saw our gas tax revenue drop precipitously. We weren't sure that we were going to be able to bring that back until July, when the city received $146,000 out of CARES funding to make up for the lost revenue in gas taxes. And since then, gas tax has, at the state level, has rebounded to a point where we're starting to get our normal distribution again. So we asked the council earlier this year for a supplemental budget, and it was approved to reestablish that FTE. And this budget restores it on a permanent basis. I do have some long-term concerns on the viability of the gas tax fund. State projections show gas taxes falling as time moves forward, as vehicles become more fuel efficient, as electric cars make their significant debut. We will see a decline in those gas taxes unless the state is able to replace that revenue with something related to a mileage tax or something similar. The state has been piloting programs to try some kind of mileage tax. I don't know where they're at in that process. I know I participated in that for a little while, but nothing has been adopted to date. So long-term, we may actually roll back that FTE, particularly in the next 3 years. The budget forecast says that I may need to pull that back out again. Hoping attrition at that point would cover that potentially. Otherwise, we'll have to make some changes.
Mr. Chairman, I brought this up years ago to Ray. And I talked to Christie about this yesterday. About having a little tax here for a town, precedent. A penny or two. Christie said in Silverton, it got passed pretty easily. Not, I think you told me.
Well, in Silverton, there was a street that was heavily traveled by most of the community. And we were able to pass that gas tax based on the fact that all of the funds that we raised from the tax went straight to the renovation of that street. And it was a $5 million project just to replace that and reconstruct that street. So there was a specific need in our community that our residents supported.
And so I tried to bring this to the council many years ago and with Ray, and I know everybody was kind of against it at the time. But with the inflow that we have at the dam and everybody going skiing and wait, Brandon was just talking about gas taxes. If we lose that, then really from what I'm hearing, we're gonna be in trouble in the next few years. So trying to fix our streets, if a penny or two is brought to the people for a vote, I don't know. I'd like the city council to take it, and think about it. And I know Dave's always been against it, but I really think that a gas tax that we're sending to wouldn't hurt them. Our gas is pretty cheap here in town. So I just request that.
It's too bad we can't get revenue from speeding this town.
Yeah.
We'd relay our streets pretty quick.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Christie, did you keep that tax? And is it still in there?
Yes.
It never went away after you did the $5 million thing?
No, because the street fund is continuously needing additional revenue
Yes,
streams to support the street system.
Yeah.
You just can't keep up with the revenues that are coming in.
Well, I'd be willing to bet that when all of them get their big reward for buying a Tesla, they're gonna have a mileage thing. They're not gonna get that go. Because if there's 1 million of them in Oregon, they're not gonna let you get out without paying a tax for the roads. So I think, 20% for those guys would be fine, just what I'm saying.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I just would be opposed to a gas increase in the form of a tax because commercial rigs already pay a ton of money in taxes. We also have to pass those costs off to the customer. So if you are going to get a penny or two in gas tax, your street costs are going to go up to cover that. So it's going to be a wash, in my opinion, either way, and it actually might raise the cost of repairs and whatnot. I had to raise the cost of my loads of gravel to my customer by like $70 because of all of the increase in fuel. And so the customer is the one who pays for the fuel increase when you want to go fix your roads with that money. The contractor is just going to charge more money to get that project done. So I don't support that at all.
I'm just gonna be honest, I think that was probably one of the most ridiculous proposals I've heard in a long time, so that's all I've got for that.
So, Brandon,
So
I think that one of my concerns is. Yeah, because I don't know how to work the mic, that's one of my concerns. One of my concerns with as far as our streets is concerned is that we have a lot of trucks using streets that are not made for trucks. And it breaks them down quite quickly. I don't have an answer to that, but it does make for another question as to how do we keep those streets up?
And right now, the only answer in the city of Sweet Home is the state revenue we get from the state gas tax.
So, Mr. Chair, I don't know what the commercial road mile tax goes for, but I know that trucks pay a tax per road mile that we drive on. So I don't actually know where that money goes, but it goes somewhere. I don't know why we couldn't see if it went to our own streets here. I don't know if it goes to state highways or federal highways or local municipalities. It's not just a gas tax that commercial rigs pay. We also pay a road mile tax.
So I know that state gas tax allocations are based on number of miles of road in specific cities. And they have a whole distribution. We could certainly ask for, some assessment on what the city gets from those revenues. I'm gonna guess that it's not a ton because they're probably not, I don't know, at least on the commercial side, if they're including privately owned, not privately owned, but city streets compared to Highway 20. Or Main Street if they're configuring that into their base, but.
So I would be opposed to any increased taxes at all, especially with gas, because the higher gas prices for people just trying to get to work. It is crazy and our community is suffering because of that. I do understand Gerson's point. But I believe the problem in our secondary roads with the weight of trucks, it lies with the sanitation department, the weight of those trucks. And I think they need to be held accountable for what it's costing our citizens
Now,
not only in services, but in weight on those trucks.
so
And that's the problem.
But
It's not all trucks, it's those trucks.
It's a catch-22 situation. Sweet Home Sanitation is supposed, I thought was supposed to come before council for the rate increases. In the last few years, they've been increasing their rates pretty good.
I think the last time they came before council, they were allowed to raise it CPI.
Yes, they were.
And if they needed more than CPI, then they had to come talk to you.
And it's really inappropriate.
But I do want to add that sanitation companies within Sweet Home, which clearly there's only one, but they do pay franchise fees. So the idea is that those franchise fees are to offset that type of work, you know, as they're driving around our streets, and that it's supposed to offset that.
Well, where I was going with this too, is that if we went after the sanitation department for more money, they're just gonna turn around and charge the citizens, so it's kind of a catch-22.
But they do need to come before the council though, and so I think we need to review that policy.
I
would ask
agree,
that we
because it's been a while, I know it's been
Yeah.
quite a while, that's why I'm asking
Well,
the
we-
question.
And
Mr.
it's
Chairman,
costing our people on the front and the back end.
the mayor and I talked about that one time before, because we saw that they asked for a 3 point whatever raise it was, and we didn't hear anything about that. But I tell you what, they're tearing up 18th Avenue.
That's
They're
what's happening
tearing
on
it
Street
up.
Two.
Because they take all those trucks down on Ames Creek, across Mountain View, and park them over there in the property that they own outside the,
So
I think that's outside the city limits.
I don't necessarily want to impede.
Yeah, it is inside the city limits, because, when I worked for the county, I did a project out there, and we used their area to park in, and it was.
I thought that's fine, was before then, but that's
No.
fine.
I don't necessarily want to impede the conversation, but certainly these are, all of these ideas are great.
Yeah.
It's the council that's gonna have to make some kind of change if there is anything that they want to bring forward as far as additional revenue for the streets fund. So while I'm not here to stomp on anybody's conversation, that's gonna have to be a council action. So certainly if you have ideas, I'd say take those to the council, and we can, they can certainly review those options.
Mr. Richard, I have one more thing. So we're limited to what we can do with the phone, the power.
Yes.
What's the other? It's like 8% or 5%, whatever it is. Are they in that same situation? So we can only charge them 3% or 5% or whatever it is.
7,
Okay, and that's the max. We can never go higher than that.
I believe so, yes. Most of those franchise fees are locked based
Yeah.
on federal
Okay.
law.
Question, Brandon.
Yes.
This is now the first time I've seen the increase of the group insurance 50%. Why did the street jump that high and they didn't lower?
We had some changes so I budget group insurance based on what each individual person has selected. So likely what that means is we had some shifting of staff. One of the staff members in there either has a different, maybe they have a family rate versus somebody else who has just an employee rate. That would be the reason for the increase. It's based on the actual people on the fund.
Mr. Chair, I have a question regarding the admin service charges and the finance charges on that. Big enough? Yeah.
Yes, they did.
That up for you just well.
Yes, I did. Yes, you did. Thank you. So yes, administrative charges have increased in this fund. The reason for that, the charges for those are calculated, well, actually, there's a multitude of reasons. One, we've talked about, we have some additional expenses as far as the city manager's office are concerned, so some of that's being passed down. Second, those funds, the distribution of the internal service funds for public works areas and other areas are based on percentages of total expenditures. In 2022, the current budget year, the streets fund accounted for 11% of the total public works funding. For 2023, that estimate is 30% of the total funding. So that is the reason for the big jump in the admin charges. A lot of that's due to capital. There's some significant capital expenses budgeted for streets in the next year, as we try to combat some projects. One request that I have here, this one I will admit, I missed this one. Is I am requesting that the budget committee add a transfer out from the gas tax fund for an interfund loan. It was an interfund loan established in 2019. We used it to purchase a street sweeper. It was a 5-year, 0 interest loan. I forgot to budget for the payment. So I need $41,238 in the street fund to cover that loan. That goes back to Fund 570. Still a street fund, but just a different funding source. The last note that I have for streets is in Fund 585, you'll notice, I think it's 150,000. Yes, that is correct. 150,000 in projects and improvements. Those aren't attached to any specific project, but there are a lot of street projects and sidewalk projects happening in the next fiscal year. And I got caught this year with not enough money to cover some stuff related to the 58th to 60th or something like that, ODOT sidewalk project. I don't want to get caught again. So I'm asking for 150,000 as ODOT does some more work in town in case I need to cover some unanticipated expenditures. The one out at 58th Avenue, we had to drop a water line that we weren't anticipating and had to pull from various areas to make it work. So that is purely a buffer, no actual project specifically allocated.
So is that gonna be enough? Because the prices are going through the roof?
I hope so. If not, I'm gonna come back. So the rest of it's in a reserve for future expense line. So then with that, I could come back to council and ask for an adjustment if I had to. I don't like to, I try not to pad too much. Folks in my line of work hate buffer. They hate that word.
Well, in streets, there's lots of change orders and you never know what you're gonna run into.
Right.
And so if you don't have some sort of fund to cover those unanticipated expenses, you're gonna be in a bad way.
Yeah.
Don't get your project done.
The dropping of the water line cost us about 75,000, I think, and maybe a little bit more. So I'm 150,000. I was hoping we'll cover whatever may pop up because it's not our primary project. We may just have to do something like move a few fire hydrants or potentially move a meter here and there. So I'm thinking 150,000 will cover us if we have to have it. Questions for streets?
What was that number? 43 or something?
41,238 for the transfer app.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right, moving to page 183 in your book. This one goes to 186. We're going to talk about Weddle Bridge for a second. This is a small fund. It was established originally with some donated funds to care and maintain Weddle Bridge. I have budgeted all of the dollars that are in that fund in case Public Works needs them to do some stuff with Weddle Bridge. I know there are some necessary expenditures coming for Weddle Bridge. We're gonna need more than what's in that fund, but that'll get us started.
Well, the bridge is getting torn up. And we have got to do something to stop it. And I think this is just what I'm seeing and hearing is that the kids are coming out of the school and tearing it up on the east side and other places too. We have to come up with some sort of plan to stop that. And I think that has to be in consent. The same thing with the school district needs to help us stop that. Because it's bad. It's really bad. And they get up on it, they spray stuff and do break things. And, you know, that's one of our big things in the city of Sweet Home is our bridge. And it's in Sankey Park, which we spent thousands and tens of thousands of dollars on to keep up. And they're not tearing that up yet, but I don't anticipate that staying that way. I hope it does. But we have, so at some point, we're gonna have to come up with grants and Angela's doing a good job of looking up that stuff, but it's gonna, you know, it's just like not painting your house. If you don't paint it, it's just gonna get worse and worse and worse.
So to address that,
yeah,
the city within the last week and actually is working on the down payment for them to get started today. But the city is moving forward with the expansion of a security system in that park, including multiple cameras on Weddle Bridge of significantly higher resolution. Should be useful for our police department, for our park staff. So we are moving forward with security plans for that park using available capital dollars in this year. They will be done before the end of June.
Well, the thing that bothers me is that, okay, we have to find things, and when you see these kids, or make it the adults too, don't get me wrong. So they mess stuff up, but there's no consequences. I don't believe there will be any consequences, and that really bothers me. Anyway, that's all we talk about this in the parks all the time.
And I can't speak to that specifically, but the cameras will certainly help.
Yeah.
And a comment on that too, we have a jamboree, there's a tremendous amount of people on that bridge do the jamboree, that don't help matter.
Yeah.
So is this something that we should be looking for a partnership on the bridge? Like maybe a timber company or something that would partner with us and help with expenses of timbers and the things that bridge needs.
I think the Park and Tree Committee would love to hear that idea. They are looking for, we had a meeting today. I know that they're looking for ways to aid in that regard. That might be something that they would be willing to pursue to get some help with that.
So there are entities that if they get the recognition and that's a good endeavor right there, high community profile. So
One thing in the future, you may have to do is add another line under other revenues for donations. Like you did for pools and others.
Mr. Chairman, we talked about that today. But I think that we need to, like on the boards, on the floor, we walk, we need to put different stuff there. We need some treaty stuff, but we can get in the weeds here, and I don't want to do that. So, we'll work on that the best we can.
We've budgeted some funds to get us started.
We did schedule, or we will be scheduling a community paint day for the bridge, all white paint, and then we'll come back and support it somehow. We do have some rot and we'll be addressing that a little bit, but and an inspection at some point.
So, Brandon, I would not hesitate to contact the Jamboree to support helping with the Weddle Bridge, only because they use it and it's a part of their celebration. So perhaps they would be willing to help support that too.
Perhaps, I think that's definitely something the council could pursue if that's the council desire.
we might even be able to charge for reserving it for weddings and things like that.
I think we already do that.
We already.
In the bridge, we charge.
I think we do.
Yeah, it's very minimal.
So Brandon, going back to the thing of adding another line in here for donations.
We could certainly do so. If we don't have a specific program, I generally don't add a donation line because then what could potentially happen is we've got expenditure authority that we don't have revenue to back up and we miss it. So what I would recommend is if we do some kind of actual donation push for Weddle Bridge, that we do a supplemental budget to budget the expenditure authority once that revenue has been received.
Mr. Chairman, I think there's only two at this table that would know about the money they put on their water bill to pay for the pool. Back in, whenever it was, and a lot of people did it actually, maybe not very much money, $1 or whatever it is, and so that might be something we could put out there. And I think we talked about that at our.
That's why I brought it up because.
Yeah.
Back in the day when they were about ready to close the pool down.
Yeah.
We did that.
Yeah.
Get
So
some
that,
funds.
yeah.
I think if with the current painting project that Public Works is currently working on with our security upgrades, once all that is complete, I think that would be a good time. I know somebody listening to this meeting that would probably assist me in getting that added to our utility bills. But we need to, I think you need to have something to show for that. And so we're doing our part as the city to make some necessary upgrades to get it to a spot where then we can put that out there and say, look, we're looking for your help. Page 187, special events. This goes to page 190 in your budget book. The Special Events Fund was created a long time ago to be used for things like the Sweetheart Run, the zombie zoop. I think there were probably some other specific functions that had either, ticketed revenue or participation stuff. That's what this fund exists for. The Sweetheart Run is kind of the only thing, at least in the last few years, that has been active. It didn't do it this year. Don't know, Rotary has taken that on recently, but we still help facilitate some transactions, specifically registrations and such through the city. So we've kept the fund intact. I have budgeted some event revenue for the next fiscal year if the Sweetheart Run makes a return. And we'll be ready to assist the Rotary at that time.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. Does the Harvest Festival come out of this one?
It does not. The Harvest Festival is budgeted in the general fund as part of the community economic development budget.
Mr. Chairman, I talked to Chrissy about this the other day. Now, there's a $15,000 thing for special things, and I think I understood what she said. It's $15,000 is what we have total.
Yes.
Yes, and so I just want to make sure I was clear with that one.
The 15,000 is for movies in the park and for Harvest Festival primarily, I think, right, Blair? Blair's nodding his head yes. There is $5,000 in the general fund that is given to the Sweet Home Community Foundation annually as part of a grant process that they run. That was something the council decided to do 3 years ago, I think, shortly after I started here. And then the proposed budget has $10,000 next year out of the general fund for the council to use towards community events. That could be a whole host of things potentially. And there's an admin, finance and property committee is currently reviewing, what a plan might look like for that as far as application process, specific guidelines for allocating those funds, that kind of stuff. But we've budgeted 10,000 to get you started next year.
So I have a question. Why is the Harvest Festival not under special events?
Because it doesn't have an associated revenue line. We don't get revenue from the Harvest Festival. And so the special events fund is only something we use to recognize revenue in, cash out for specific events. And so since we don't make enough money in that fund from other sources to cover the cost of the Harvest Festival.
Okay, so the health fair would also be under economic development?
The health fair in the past has come out, I want to say that's come out of streets for some reason.
Well, can we clean that up?
I don't know why.
That doesn't make sense.
I don't know why. I can look into that piece, but that's where it's been budgeted. That's where it's come from in the past.
Let's fix that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yes, it would either come from the general fund or other council expenses or in the internal service fund.
And economic development, are we talking the same money that is being used for business facades and that stuff, or is that a separate?
Separate.
Mr. Chairman, so the Harvest Festival.
Well, I'm being told the street was the safety fair, not the health fair. So
Okay.
So the Harvest Festival.
general fund.
That makes sense.
Don't we charge them, don't they pay a fee to have their place where they make hamburgers and stuff? Don't we, there's no fee for that?
No.
So,
Vendor fees for that.
okay, all right.
There are discussions of how vendors may look in the future. I don't want to get ahead of anything because no decisions have been made, but there might be some changes next year. Yeah.
I would say it's a good thing. Well, even when we had this stupid thing up there where you only have 10 people in their timers, it still went over really well. We had it didn't work like this. It was pretty good.
Unless there's any other questions, I will move on to page 191 of your budget book. This goes to page 194. This is the Public Transit Grant Fund. This is money in, money out. I don't have really a whole lot of say in this at all. So this money is the Lynn Shuttle Program operated by the Sweet Home Senior Center, applies for grants and money from the state of Oregon. We, as the city, are the recognized fiscal agent for that. I don't know how or when that started, but we received the money from the state. We then cut a check that goes off to the senior center for the operation of the Lynn Shuttle. That's all this fund does. In, money out. If there's any questions on that, I'll move to 195 in your budget book. The last of our funds, ladies and gentlemen. This goes to page 198 in your book. This is the Economic Development Fund. Economic Development Fund was established with leftover monies from an old community development block grant. But then the city asked if we could use that money to put towards economic development purposes. For a long time, that fund has sat in the $450,000 to $500,000 range. That is not the case anymore, as we have used those dollars to fund the commercial exterior improvement program, and also for other economic development opportunities as time has gone on. So in the coming fiscal year, I have budgeted $309,320 that would be put towards any economic development opportunity that the council sees fit to hand money to.
Could you repeat that once, what that's for?
Money for the council to hand out for economic development opportunities.
Yeah, not bands playing down by Rio. Never mind.
Money that the
Okay.
council hands out for economic development opportunities.
To be continued.
That's what it was put out for, and that's what it should be
Well,
used for.
It was originally federal funds to be spent on homes.
Yeah.
And then it got moved to businesses.
Yeah.
Which uplift our community. If it is used for anything other than brick and mortar buildings and for our community long-term, I believe it's a misappropriation since it was originally given to be used on homes. And so I find that very disturbing. And so,
I don't know the specifics of the request back then. I just know that the city had asked to use it for economic development purposes.
multiple ones in this room were there at the time when this was moved because we were told we didn't have the staff to be able to make sure people had that improvement ability for their homes. And then it was moved because it wasn't being used because of that to businesses, which is a stretch in the first place. And so to better our community for everybody who lives here, okay. But you're moving it too far. And I really do, will have a problem in the future. It needs to be used for the betterment of everybody in our community. And anyway, I have a strong opinion on that. And we need to have a discussion later about how that goes.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, so just to get to that real quickly, when we switch things over from one funding opportunity to a different funding opportunity, was that allowable use of funds or are we actually misappropriating
The
funds?
federal, like I said, I wasn't around for that specifically, but the federal government approved our request to use that for economic development. I don't know exactly what the specifics were. I just know that it's a fairly, they left economic development somewhat broad.
So the program went away. It was no longer there and the money was still sitting there. So as a council, we decided that we would go ahead and use it in the community, but to fix the facades in our community. Because that helps our citizenry, right? And so that was, it came about only because the program went away and the money had sat there for so long and not been used.
But the allowable use of funds isn't being misappropriated. It's just
I
open
think
for
if you're,
interpretation.
I think you're using it for parties, it's not the original intent.
Correct.
And that's a problem. So that's probably not a great time to have this conversation.
Mr. Chairman, I think the history of that was, there was a group that the county, Albany and Lebanon and Sweet Home took over this amount of money that was given to us. it was 175,000 or something like that. Well, that went away. Nobody wanted to deal with it anymore. And so Dave Hotley says, hey, let's do something with it. And that's what we did. We transferred that to economic development. And then we also put a ton of money in that when we had the money. I think it was like 250,000 at the time, and it added up to like 400. And we used a bunch of that for the very things that we said that's what we wanted to do. And so you're absolutely right. And it's been a pretty good process. But some of it, Councilor Gordy is absolutely right. That was basically for homes, that 175,000. Now, nobody wanted to do it. So we ended up with it, and that's just kind of the way it worked.
But it's stagnant money. There's no more money going into it. So once it's gone, it's gone. And so we need to be very careful how we spend this money.
I agree with Councilor Gorley. We were stretching.
Yeah.
And this is a discussion for council.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
I don't have any other budget pages for you to look at. I know you're excited. I do have a couple of things that we will cover, some information I think that will be helpful as you move forward in potentially making a decision this evening. I should have printed this out. I will still print this out for you. But for now, I'm going to throw it on the screen. So we have talked about my supposed crystal ball, of which, you know, we do the best that we can, and we use kind of historical trends and potential economic conditions of the future to project where we will be in 5 years. One of the things that I probably did not reflect on well enough is the status of our general fund. So I do want to take a second to kind of cover that. One of the things that we did not highlight specifically is that you'll see in the general fund that we're eating about $400,000 in fund balance in order to proceed with our operations as we have proposed. From time to time, that has happened. However, in the grand scheme of things, in the long term, having more expenditures than you have in revenue coming in probably isn't a great idea, because at some point that well runs dry. So that is a concern for the general fund, you know, over the next 5 years. We have made some changes to ensure that the fund maintains that 6 months of fund balance 5 years out. But it comes at a cost. So specifically, if you're looking here at the general fund on your screen, the capital outlay line here, the capital outlay row is blank after the green highlight is what we've proposed to you, what's in your books. It's blank, moving out multiple fiscal years. That means I don't have any capital money for parks. I don't have any capital money if Blair needs a new printer, a very large copy scanner thing. I don't have anything. So primarily our capital outlays park stuff, but so anyways, that's a concern, certainly going forward, and something I think that the budget committee needs to consider as you're making your decisions here and approving these budgets. I wanted to circle back quickly.
They took the month away. One thing that I want to point out to the budget committee is that while there's no capital outlay in those line items moving forward, we're not going to spend every dollar that we have appropriated in the budget. So there's going to be an excess carry forward that will then plug into those future years. So when we're looking at this model, don't think that we can't do anything in future years if we approve this budget tonight. That's not the case. But we do want to bring it to your attention that we are expending about $475,000 in excess of what we have coming in revenue proceeds this next fiscal year. That's what we're projecting. That's what we're proposing to you for your approval.
And in the public safety section, we had some conversations yesterday surrounding the levy funds and specifically what that tax levy may look like. This is kind of our, I will hide these rows to make it a little easier for you to see if I can navigate my computer. This is what our police fund looks like right now. So the major driver of revenues in the police fund is, in the public safety fund is the property tax revenue. In each of these years, you'll see my complex formula up there. That's the magic at work. But what I have done over the next 5 years is planned for a slowing of the housing market, kind of leveling off, compression starting to return. These are obviously the best, these are, I wouldn't even call it the worst case really, but conservative scenarios that we can kind of foresee, especially as interest rates rise, home buying starts to slow down, prices start to come down, as well as real market values. So this 5-year forecast projects that we'll start to see that compression come back. It will not come back as fast as what we saw after the 2008 housing collapse, because certainly right now, there are no specific indicators of a new market bubble, although they're out there a little bit. But we have taken some care in planning for a decline in what we actually would receive from property tax revenues as those compressions increase. This will also show you that over the next several years, there's no large increase in the property tax revenues projected, as we've put into this forecast, kind of a slow increase in bringing that property tax rate back to the $7.85. And the fund is able to sustain that over the 5-year cycle that we have in front of you. So again, our target has always been, my target in preparing these budgets and the city manager then after, is making sure that we hit a 6-month reserve at the end of 5 years. So we have taken great care to make sure that that is actually the case 5 years out. And that's assuming that the property tax levy is $6.30 as we've proposed in your book. So I did want to highlight those 2 items for you. What we'll need from the committee is a few things. We'll need a decision on some of the changes that we have requested from you, specifically the $200,000 for the HVAC in Fund 202, the 41,000 number, I can't remember, $41,238 in the streets fund for the addition of the interfund loan. And on the wastewater side, I'm requesting to move the 1.5 million in contingency and the 1.7 million from the unappropriated ending fund balance down to the construction line to meet the 8.5 million, to give you a total budget of $11.7 million in construction funds. Those are the 3 changes that we've asked for. This is also your opportunity as a budget committee. If you wish to make additional changes, now would be the time for that. Before we get to a point where we potentially approve a budget. And I really turn it back over to you.
I have a question. How much does the city, for like all the transactions, for like people paying their bills, the water bills, whatever, how much does the city eat in credit card fees?
It varies depending on the type of transaction. So typically on our utility billing side, we see a $1 charge plus an associated percentage. On the building and planning side, there is a similar charge. It just kind of depends on the system that we're using. At least on the building and planning side, we're mandated by the state to use the Acela program. And so we're stuck with that system and their associated credit card rates. The utility billing side, we've been able to get some flexibility and reduce some of those rates over time.
What's the dollar amount?
We spend north of $50,000 a year in bank and credit card fees. We have banking fees that total about $6,000 a year. So that would put us at probably, we'll say 45,000 approximately in credit card charges for the year.
If we would do like some other cities and actually charge the $75, $85 charge for using their credit card, the city could actually come out with probably a little money.
We could either recoup or come out ahead a little bit, and that would have to be a council decision since it's a fee.
So as a business owner, we come into the credit world and almost every credit card company or banking company is giving you points for using your card, right? And people use their card more because of the points.
Right.
And you're losing the revenue. So if you were to charge an additional fee, they'll most likely pay cash or by check. And then my business completely 100% rolled over all fees to all customers because of cat tax. So I'm right there, I'm losing 6% of my sale just on cat tax and credit card fees. So I pass those fees on. So is there something that the city could possibly do? Because when I tell somebody it's 3.5% on a $1,000 charge, they're gonna be, I'll be right back, I'm gonna get cash.
Yeah, and I can tell you that the city did have some credit card fees in the past.
So you said it went up significantly, and credit card processing.
We've seen a lot of additional credit card processing, yes. The city in the past had credit card fees that folks then, just like you said, chose not to pay with plastic.
I go on vacation every year, just on.
And some people do, but basically they chose to other means. Doesn't mean that we would necessarily get out of the transaction fees related to that, because then every check we process has a fee with the bank. Every dollar in cash that I deposit has a fee with the bank. So while I'm not saying that it would necessarily be as high, we would still incur some kind of fee for the processing of all of those items. So either way, we're stuck with some kind of banking or merchant fees, whether it's cash, check, bank card, money order, whatever it may be.
Well, this topic came from council several times. We've had conversations regarding it several times. And we've asked the city to come back with options, because I totally agree with what everybody's talking about. I think that we need to recoup a lot of our fees that we're being charged. Plus, the discussions also came about looking at different banks, because some banks charge fees, while some other banks don't charge fees to do a bank. So.
And on the banking side, so the city has done everything it can to reduce its merchant fees at this point. We have gone through and changed credit card processors. We've shifted a lot to, like on our utility billing side, we used to use a third-party processor. We've done everything now in-house with Springbrook and have been able to reduce that rate some. What I can tell you on the banking side is we're not, because we are a public funds group, and because of the restrictions of the state, we're not going to be able to get out of things that they call account analysis. We are in the process of moving our partnership to a new bank that has offered us lower fees, but there are still fees. And it's, say what you will, a lot of it may just be because they can, but we have not been able to find any place, certainly semi-local, that will be able to process our stuff that's approved by the state of Oregon that doesn't charge a fee.
Yeah, I was more of saw that. I was only bringing this topic up for the budget committee, so knows this has been an ongoing discussion.
Well, I still believe, we live in a world of plastic. And the people that use plastic to pay their water bill, electric bill, they personally don't mind using or having to pay that extra $1.85 because they're using other people's money and being able to pay it later instead of writing a check and have to use it up, because some people use the credit card because this month's a bad month. I'm gonna have to use my credit card to pay my electric bill this month and save money for groceries this month. So I really think that the city should step up and take some of those costs and reap the wealth, because the people are loving using their credit card and not have to pay the fee.
I would say if the council wishes to adopt that, that is the prerogative of the council.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we beat this up
Yeah,
quite a bit.
for sure.
Yeah, and, no, I'm not talking about tonight. I'm talking about in the past. We've had these conversations several times. I'm not opposed to that. I don't use a credit card hardly at all for what I do. But, yeah, I think that we should look at that and see, you know, it may not go, but it's certainly worth looking at. And I don't know what the number would be. I don't have a clue about that. But anyway,
So
so,
we'll go ahead and revisit this council.
Yeah.
Okay, so the recognition of visitors and public comment period.
Do we need a motion about these changes that we just talked about?
What's next?
Yeah, I would say that you could do that after this period if there's public comment, yeah.
The only person we have in line is Cindy.
So there's nobody online
Okay,
other than Cindy, and I don't know that she has anything she wants to add.
oh, I think she,
I get some text messages.
okay, so then we need a motion to approve the budget and levying taxes. Right?
First, we need to do the changes
Okay.
that we discussed.
I don't see
If,
changes
if,
here.
yeah. When we put together the agenda, we're optimistic that we won't have changes. I think that's the case.
So moved with recommended changes.
Second. Oh, this is the. All right. Bob Brand.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Derek Dix. Kenneth Hammond.
Yes.
David Loman.
Yes.
Josh Thorstead.
Yes.
Mayor Muller.
Yes.
Counselor Coleman.
Yes.
Counselor Gerson.
Yes.
Counselor Corley.
Yes.
Counselor Richards. Counselor Sanchez.
Yep.
Counselor Trask.
yes.
What's he gonna get you?
Can't take them anywhere. That would be the same one, right?
I prepared a little aid if anybody wants to use this.
I move that the budget committee of the city of Sweet Home approve the amended budget for the 2022-2023 fiscal year in the amount of $32,053,009.
Second. So I have a motion by Mr. Hanlon and a second by Counselor Coleman. Roll call. Counselor Coleman.
Yes.
Bob Brianna.
Yes.
Counselor Gerson.
Yes.
Kenneth Hanlon.
Yes.
Counselor Corley.
Yes.
David Loman.
Yes.
Counselor Richards.
Yep.
Josh Thorstad.
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez.
Yep.
Counselor Trask.
Yes. $9 or too much. Then.
Okay, for this next part, whoever wants to make this motion, I've put in question marks here. This is specifically related to the police levy. Because I didn't want to make any assumptions. This is yours. This is your budget. So whoever decides to make this motion will need to plug in a dollar amount for the public safety levy. Up to $7.85.
Proposed.
I proposed $6.30 per thousand.
So that's lower than what we got the voters to.
Correct.
They moved that down to 7.
So. Would the committee like to discuss this at all
Yes.
before we have anybody make a motion?
Yes. We'd like to talk.
Okay.
So last night we talked about approving this at the dollar amount that you said. But some people discussed that they wanted to not give the money back.
Correct.
And allocate those funds. That's what we talked.
I still feel, that we leave it as what the voters actually voted for Because, you know, you give back and then the next couple of years after this all runs out, then we have to take it and ask the voters to, but we need the money back again. And that kind of upsets the people, you know, they've already approved it. They already know and they put it into their budget, but they're gonna pay this money. So I feel that we should keep it, but that's my thought. Take a vote.
According to what, the way it works, I think is we don't have to ask them to get it back from them. We just, as a committee, vote the next year to increase it by an increment that Brandon had calculated. They may not like it, and it's not a huge sum of money that people will save on their taxes. But I think just the idea speaks volumes to the citizens of Sweden.
That was the one that it came out to about $100 a year, right?
75.
There's about
178. 178. For the households, the 75 or 85% of households.
85% of taxable properties. I couldn't tell you if they're all residential.
And so that really does change the picture for me. So I think that I'm in favor of the recommended amount of 630.
Brandon, is this the one for the library?
Well, there's this.
All three of the tax levies are.
Oh, okay. All right.
Do we take a vote?
Somebody would need to make a motion first. Before we
Any
do-
other questions though? Anybody has anything other to say about this?
Well, Mr. Chair, I'm a little bit on the fence about that too, but I hate to lower it and then next year have to put it back up by 50 cents or whatever it is. But the bottom line is, it's probably a good thing for the people to know that we're being good with our money that they gave us. The other side of it is, I'm not happy about giving it to the county. Simply not as I don't.
Well, the good thing
wanna
is the county will get all of that.
I understand that, but I don't want to give them 50 cents. I'm sorry, but I don't.
Mr.
I
Chair,
agree.
I was gone yesterday. Can you just maybe repeat? They're trying to change the value.
I think Brandon would be great for that.
So the proposed budget includes a proposal where the budget committee would approve a lower tax levy specifically for the public safety levy that was approved. So in 2020, voters approved a tax levy for the public safety side of up to $7.85. It doesn't happen often. But governments have the flexibility then to take a lower rate if they so choose to do so. We've put together this budget. The public safety fund has a beginning fund balance at the beginning of next year of $3 million, which is enough to cover 12 months of operating expenditures. Our proposal includes that reduction to start spending down that fund balance and be good stewards of taxpayer funds. If we don't need the funds, proposal in front of you says, then we wouldn't take it. So it's a $1.55 reduction, $1.55 per thousand of assessed value for each property. 85% of the taxable properties in Sweet Home would fall outside of the compression bounds, and so they would actually see that return to their pockets in the form of less property taxes they have to pay next year. I do want to add a caveat that every year there is a 3% automatic assessed value increase. And so they may not see a reduction, but essentially what this means is it may not be as high next year as it could be. 15% so the remaining properties would not see any change in their property tax bills. And instead those funds would go to the library, about a third of them, and the rest would go to the county for their public safety levy. So that's kind of what is on the table.
Can you repeat that last sentence real fast? A third goes to the county.
A third goes to the Sweet Home Public Library for their local option levy, and the remaining 2/3 goes to the county because those homes are in compression. So they're already paying less than they would normally pay.
Of the up to 7 and some odd
Up to
cents.
Yeah. So each household, this is where I could talk about this forever. But property taxes, there's a general government limit of $10 per thousand of real market value. Right now, inside the Sweet Home city limits, property taxes are for general government items just over $16 per thousand per assessed value, so they do a market adjustment.
So you're just asking for the change in value for the police levy,
Just for the police side.
not for the library.
the library would
Not for
remain
the
the same.
county percentage, this is just only for the police. levy.
Right, we're just saying the library would.
And you
benefit.
said up to $7
$7.85 is the highest that we can levy.
and can you remind me real quick, the percentage of people that voted for that?
It was
you know?
nearly 3/4.
Yeah.
Oh, was it? 71. We think it was 71%.
So
So
71% of the people in town wanted to pay more money to have,
wanted to keep the $7.85 maximum rate for public safety expenditures.
So basically, this would just take money out of the police levy.
Yes, it would reduce what we bring in property tax revenue.
But the
Without-
caveat is they're gonna get the money they need. And the little bit of difference, the library and county, did you say sheriffs at the time?
Yeah, it's.
Would benefit from it and just under $200 annualized for the households that would get something back, the 85%. So 85% of the households in Sweet Home would see $200, just under $200 that we wouldn't be taking and putting into the police force. But this time, we don't need it, but it doesn't mean that next year or the year after, that we wouldn't be able to go back and take that, right? It's already there. So that was the big discussion. Do we retain it for the police because that's what they voted on? Or do we just go ahead and let them say, just keep this, even though your property taxes are gonna eat it up anyway? So.
And Councilor Sanchez, the budget that was proposed to us by the police department has the $6.30, not the $7.85.
Mr. Chairman.
It's based off of $6.30.
If I may, so did the county sheriffs, did they not pass levy?
They did pass a levy, yes,
Yeah, okay.
recently.
So do you think that they would give us money back if they had a bunch extra? No, they wouldn't. You don't need to answer that.
Okay.
It's about our people though, and it's okay. It's not that.
well, I,
But our people, 70%, I could see if it was 50%, but almost 3/4 of the community agreed to pay that $7.85. So they're willing to pay it, and I believe the community believes that we will use it, especially the police department. I like to sleep at night, so I love to have the coverage of the police department that we do have. So my saying, I like to keep it at the $7.85.
so, Mr. Chair, I wasn't quite done, but I believe that, like Mr. Loman said, if 70% of the people want to spend this sort of money on the police force and we're looking to retain more services from them, we might not need it now, but this is what the people have voted for, and I don't really want to go against what they voted for and act like we know better than what they chose, so.
So on that, that's a really good point. But did they vote for it because they had our backs? Did they vote for it because they had the police's backs, right? And by giving it back, we're saying we've got your back. You know what I mean? So we're keeping the $6.30. We're keeping that. We're gonna say thanks for having our backs, but we don't need all of it, right? So I think that's, it's just a point. And I agree. Either way, we're gonna be okay. But I think that the counselors who made the point about being in good faith on this, I think it's okay. I think we can do that.
It also, like the chief brought up, it shows them good stewards of the money. And I've said over the last few years, all of our levies are performance driven. Since our police department is doing a phenomenal job, I don't see any issues with our levy moving forward in the future. They continue doing the job they're doing. They're doing an awesome job. And again, levies are performance driven. If the police department was doing a lousy job, then you're gonna have fun trying to pass a levy. It doesn't matter the dollar amount. Bottom line is performance. The citizens of this community see the performance that's going on within our police department. They're very satisfied, pleased. I don't see an issue. I think it just shows good stewardship. I don't see a problem. So.
If I could add one note just for clarification, the reduction of the police levy does not mean then that we are reducing what the police department has in service offering. There's no staff reductions. There's $282,500, I think it is, in capital funds. The total expense budget increases 7.8% for next year. So we're not making reductions in what the police department is doing. Rather, what we're saying is that we can continue to do the same things with less property tax revenue for a period of time.
So, Mr. Chairman, so actually, we're not continuing to do the same things. We're actually doing more with less, right?
Yes.
Because we're adding those HVACs, we're doing the roof, we're doing a lot of repairs on the building. So we're really doing more with less money. We have debated this every year, I think, a budget for a long time. And we always come back to the same thing. Well, we don't want to give it back because then we wouldn't, we won't have it or whatever. I think this is our opportunity to say to people, we love our police department. Our police department has everything they need plus more. So we're going to give it back.
Brandon, did we not lose money from the marijuana tax that the police department gets a percentage? Didn't
All of the marijuana money is in the general fund. So the police department, it does not have an allocation.
okay, but since the state took a percentage now, then they take some that
Yeah,
we're not
the
getting?
state- It's being siphoned over to handle Measure 110.
Because I thought last year when we did the budget that marijuana tax was going to actually help us keep all the staff that they, didn't they, let some people go and then, or?
Not that I remember of last year.
Because I thought that the extra money that we were getting from the marijuana tax was going to help us
Is the police?
for the police department to
They took
retain
that away
all the,
Took it away from the police by putting it on.
And that's because they have what they need.
Right. They have the resources.
Yeah,
They have the existing revenue to make their budget.
it's been really good.
Right.
So I really love this conversation. I think we need to vote.
I think so too.
I do too.
So, Mr. Chairman, I move that the Budget Committee of the City of Sweet Home levy property taxes for the 2022-2023 fiscal year at the rate of 1.4157 per 1,000 of assessed value for the permit levy in the amount of $6.30 per 1,000 of assessed value for the police local option levy and in the amount of $1.17 per 1,000 of assessed value for the library services local option levy.
I second that.
I third it.
Kenneth Hamlin,
Yes.
Counselor Gerson,
Yes.
David Loman,
no,
Counselor Gorley,
Yes.
Josh Thorstad,
Yes.
Counselor Richards.
No.
Counselor Sanchez,
Yes.
Counselor Trask,
Yes.
Bob Brianna,
Yes.
Mayor Muller.
Yes.
Motion passes 8-2. Oh, Counselor Coleman, I'm so sorry. Was that a yes?
It was a yes, yes.
Motion passes 9-2. Miss Julie.
Nice job.
I guess we're done now.
That's,
Oh, yes, sorry.
Use that hammer.
oh,
What?
real
Not
fast.
adjourned.
I do want to just say thank you. This process, this is, obviously you have the book before you. It's huge. There is a huge time commitment for this. I appreciate all of you for your support, for your diligence, for your questions. This certainly my favorite time of the year. People think I'm nuts for that, but I really do appreciate everything you put into this.
That's
So
because
thank
you
you.
are. That's because you are.
I might be nuts.
And I want to thank Brandon and all of the city staff for their work in putting these budget numbers together. It's a tremendous undertaking each year. And I have to say that this is the first finance director I've worked with that's been able to steal the mic from the manager. So great job, Brandon.
Thanks, everybody.
You could,
You don't mind my questions?
you could give him a couple days off of that pay.
That's fine.